Imagine playing in the absolute biggest sporting event of your life, right? You're out there for a grueling 120 minutes, and you are the creative orchestrator of your team.
The guy whose literal job description is to touch the ball.
Exactly, to dictate the entire tempo.
Mm-hmm.
And you complete exactly 6 passes. 6. In 2 hours.
Sounds impossible.
It really does. I mean, if you watch the 2026 Champions League Final, you probably walked away feeling either completely exhausted or just, I don't know, deeply cynical.
Oh, heavily cynical, yeah.
Right. So today we're taking a massive stack of sources. We've got the official UEFA match reports, the granular Opta tracking data, and honestly, my favorite part, the incredibly raw, real-time fan reactions scraped right off sprawling Reddit match threads.
Where it's like Star Soccer, our Gunners, and Champions.
Yeah, exactly. And our mission today is to figure out how a match featuring the best attack in Europe against the best defense in Europe devolved into one of the most statistically bizarre, agonizing, and polarizing finals in modern football history.
A total mathematical anomaly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Set the stage for us. What was the psychological baggage both of these clubs dragged out onto the pitch at the Puskás Aréna in Budapest?
Well, it was an absolute glitch in the matrix of modern football. Because you go into a game like this expecting a tactical chess match, maybe a clash of philosophies.
Sure, the classic unstoppable force meets the immovable object.
Right. But what we actually got was a bizarre experiment in human endurance and, honestly, psychological warfare. And to understand the sheer strangeness of it, we really have to look at their mindsets before kickoff. Let's start with Arsenal.
Yeah, let's do that. Because looking at their domestic run-in, I was expecting a team just brimming with swagger. I mean, they had just vanquished their demons, right?
Absolutely. They finally won the English Premier League.
Ending a 22-year drought. And they conquered England by suffocating teams with possession. They were averaging something like 65% of the ball domestically.
Yeah, they were dominant on the ball.
So I came into this final expecting them to impose their will. But the data from this match completely contradicts their entire season. Why the sudden, jarring betrayal of their own philosophy?
Because domestic success doesn't just instantly erase European trauma. You have to understand the historical weight crushing down on Arsenal's shoulders in this specific competition.
The dreaded Champions League curse.
Exactly. Coming into Budapest, Arsenal had played 225 games in European Cup and Champions League history without ever lifting the trophy.
225. Wow.
It's an all-time record for futility among elite clubs. It's a generational ghost. So yeah, they were domestic champions, but in Europe, they were chasing an ultimate historic validation that had completely, totally eluded them.
And then on the other side, you have Paris Saint-Germain dealing with a completely different kind of complex.
Oh, a very different complex.
They're backed by the limitless wealth of Qatar. Their entire organizational identity for the last decade was built around assembling this Harlem Globetrotters squad of individual superstars just to win this exact trophy.
Precisely, and they did win it the previous year. But the fascinating subplot of 2026 is that they were aiming to become the first team to win back-to-back titles since Real Madrid's three-peat.
And they were trying to do it immediately after their biggest global superstar, Kylian Mbappe, forced his way out to join Real Madrid.
Which completely flips the script on what PSG is supposed to be.
Right. The prevailing question all season was, can PSG actually be a better, more lethal, more cohesive unit without the gravitational pull of a singular megastar?
And under Luis Enrique, they proved they could. They became this multi-headed hydra in attack. You had Ousmane Dembélé, Kvicha Kvaratskhelia, and Desiree Doué.
A terrifying front three.
Absolutely terrifying. They arrived in Budapest as the highest scoring team in the competition, 45 goals.
Okay, so the stage is totally set. The unstoppable force of PSG's post-Mbappe collective against the immovable object of Arsenal's historically stingy defense, right? A defense anchored by William Saliba and Gabriel, which had conceded, only 6 goals in 15 Champions League matches?
Just 6 goals, yeah.
Which brings us to the opening whistle. And if you're looking for the exact moment where the psychological landscape of this match was forged, it happens almost immediately.
Minute 6.
Yeah, because paradoxically, the very first major event of this game is what created the next 114 minutes of grinding, suffocating frustration. Take us to that 6-minute strike.
Right, so Arsenal comes out of the tunnel looking every bit like the newly crowned champions of England. They don't look intimidated at all.
They look ferocious.
They do. They initiate this intense high press. Leandro Trossard identifies a slight hesitation in PSG's build-up at the back, and he just triggers the press.
And a pressing trigger isn't just running around randomly, right?
No, it's a coordinated systemic sprint the moment an opponent turns their body a certain way, or maybe plays a slightly underhit pass. Trossard charges down a clearance with incredible intensity.
And the ball ricochets perfectly into the path of Kai Havertz. Now, Havertz is a fascinating figure here.
Oh, completely.
Because he has this undeniable big game pedigree. He famously scored the Champions League winning goal for Chelsea back in 2021. When the lights are brightest, his heart rate just seems to drop.
He is the absolute epitome of a big moment player. So he strides clear on the left side of the penalty area. The angle is incredibly tight. I mean, the geometry of the shot requires absolute perfection.
And he doesn't try to finesse it or look for a cutback, does he?
Not at all. He just rifles a left-footed strike high into the top left corner, right past the outstretched arm of the PSG goalkeeper Matvei Safnov.
Bam. 6 minutes in, 1-0 to Arsenal.
1-0.
I mean, if you are an Arsenal fan in the stadium, or you're watching at a pub in North London, you are in absolute heaven. It is the dream start. You've struck first blood against the most dangerous attacking team in Europe.
It couldn't start better for them.
But here is where I need you to explain the mechanics of what happened next. Because Arsenal scores, the crowd goes wild, and then, well, they just vanish.
They completely retreated.
They park the bus in a way we rarely, if ever, see in a modern Champions League final from a top-tier team.
It was a drastic, almost violent tactical shift. When we say they parked the bus or deployed a low block, we really need to visualize what that actually means on the grass.
Right. Paint a picture for us.
Okay, imagine the entire Arsenal team tethered together by invisible 10-foot ropes, just shuffling side to side in unison at the very edge of their own penalty box.
Just a wall of bodies.
Exactly. They deliberately compressed the vertical space between their defensive line and their midfield line to roughly 8 yards.
Wow. So they're actively refusing to be stretched apart.
Actively refusing. They're choking the half spaces, those crucial pockets of the field between the wing and the center where creative players like Kvaratskhelia thrive.
So Mikel Arteta basically looked at his team, remembered they had the best defense in Europe, looked at PSG's terrifying pace, and made a calculated decision to bet his entire season on his backline's ability to suffer without breaking.
That's exactly what he did.
But I have to push back on this strategy, because it feels fundamentally flawed.
How so?
Well, it's like they found a winning lottery ticket in the first 5 minutes of the day and spent the next 23 hours locked inside a bank vault holding it, completely terrified to even peek out the window.
That's a great analogy.
Right. Isn't parking the bus inherently risky because you just invite wave after wave of pressure? When you willingly give up the ball, you're relying entirely on human perfection. One slip, one bad bounce, and the vault is breached.
You're not wrong.
So was this a brilliant tactical masterclass by Arteta to neutralize that front line, or a panicked, fear-based overcorrection?
That is the multi-million-dollar question, isn't it? The line between tactical genius and panicked overcorrection is really only drawn by the final score.
That's fair.
And for the first hour of the match, it looked like sheer genius. It was like PSG was trying to pick a heavy-duty padlock using a sledgehammer.
They just kept swinging.
Yeah. They had all the power, all the possession, but Arsenal had effectively removed all the keyholes. The passing lanes simply didn't exist. PSG was just endlessly banging on the outside of the box.
And Saliba and Gabriel were an absolute wall.
A total wall. Heading away crosses, blocking shots with their bodies.
But human bodies aren't meant to chase shadows for 2 hours. The sheer physical and mental toll of maintaining that invisible 8-yard tether between the lines is exhausting.
It drains you.
And eventually the pressure cracked the vault. Take us to the equalizer in the 65th minute.
Well, the problem with inviting that volume of possession is that fatigue breeds microscopic errors. And in the 65th minute, PSG put together this rapid exchange of passes inside the right edge of the penalty area.
And Christian Mascara gets caught.
Right. Mascara, who had been phenomenal up to that point, is just a half step late. His legs are heavy, he tries to cut out the danger, but Kvaratskhelia uses his body to shield the ball, and Mascara ends up bringing him down.
That's a clear foul.
A very clear foul. The referee immediately points to the spot.
A total lifeline for Paris. Ousmane Dembélé steps up. Now, the biomechanics of a penalty kick are all about deception versus power. And Dembele doesn't overthink it, does he?
No, not at all. He uses his eyes and his hip alignment to send David Raya, the Arsenal goalkeeper, diving the wrong way, and he just cleanly slots it into the bottom left corner. 1-1.
And from that moment, the entire complexion of the game shifts from a tactical battle into a grueling war of attrition.
The game just drags into extra time.
Right. And PSG is completely monopolizing the ball, but they still cannot score from open play.
No, they can't. Despite some massive chances, Kvaratskhelia actually drives into the area and hits the post in the 77th minute.
So close.
Vitinha curls a vicious shot that lands on the roof of the net, and substitute Gonçalo Ramos hits the side netting deep into extra time.
You watch them survive that extra time period, and to the naked eye, it just looks like Arsenal is holding the line by the skin of their teeth.
Oh, hanging by a thread.
But to truly understand why this strategy was so polarizing, we have to look at the tracking data. Because having established what happened on the pitch, the underlying numbers are what explain why the match felt so suffocating to watch.
The data is staggering. It really elevates this from a boring draw to an unprecedented statistical anomaly.
Let's get into it. What did Opta find?
Well, the Opta stats show that over the course of the 120 minutes, Arsenal held exactly 24.7% possession.
Okay, I need to pause you right there so the listener can fully digest that. 24.7%.
Yeah.
In a Champions League final.
It is the lowest possession average by any team in a UEFA Champions League final since Opta began recording this data back in the 2003-2004 season.
That's mind-blowing.
It is also the lowest possession Arsenal has ever recorded in any match across any competition under Mikel Arteta when they had 11 men on the pitch for the full game.
But the possession stat isn't even the most shocking part.
Not even close.
When we dug into the Reddit match threads, the passing stats that fans were pulling up were like something out of a horror movie for a club that prides itself on flowing, attacking football.
It was grim reading for Arsenal fans.
Over 120 minutes, Arsenal as a team completed under 200 passes. Listen to these individual numbers. Bukayo Saka, arguably one of the most electric, dangerous wingers in world football.
Completed exactly 4 passes.
4. And Martin Odegaard, the captain. The maestro, the guy who dictates the rhythm of the entire club. He had 6 passes in 2 hours.
6 passes.
So what does this all mean? I need you to explain mechanically how an elite midfielder survives a match with 6 passes. Did PSG just man-mark him out of the game?
It wasn't man-marking, actually. It was spatial sacrifice. When a team drops into a block that deep, the role of an attacking midfielder completely changes.
So he's not even playing his normal position.
Exactly. Odegaard wasn't functioning as a creative fulcrum. He was functioning as a defensive screen. His entire job for 114 minutes was to shuttle laterally across the pitch, closing down passing lanes into PSG's deep-lying playmakers like Vitinha.
He was basically a human shield.
A very expensive human shield, yes. When Arsenal did win the ball, they were so deep in their own half and so exhausted from chasing that their only outlet was a desperate, hopeful, long ball forward.
Which PSG center backs easily swallowed up.
Exactly. There were no passing networks for Odegaard to orchestrate because the team refused to push men forward to create passing triangles.
So it's a complete sacrifice of identity at the altar of pragmatism. They actively chose to play a completely different sport than the one that won them the Premier League.
They absolutely did.
And the neutral fans watching across the globe were totally merciless in their critique. Reading through the Sarsar subreddit, the reaction was incredibly visceral.
Oh, the neutrals hated it.
You had neutral observers calling Arsenal's display things like repulsive and a defensive gimmick. One highly upvoted comment didn't even use football terminology. They just called it actual terrorism ball.
Yeah, the phrase anti-football was the defining buzzword of the night. Neutrals pointed out the glaring hypocrisy.
What do you mean?
Well, Arsenal supporters had spent the entire 9-month domestic season bitterly complaining when smaller, less wealthy Premier League teams played a low block against them at the Emirates Stadium.
Oh, that's true. They hated it.
Right. Yet here was Arsenal, one of the wealthiest clubs on the planet, deploying the ultimate joyless low block on the biggest stage in the world.
Oh, and the rival fans were feasting on this, especially the Tottenham and Chelsea supporters.
They were having a field day.
The prevailing narrative among them was, counter-terrorists win. They were ecstatic that Arsenal's defensive gambit didn't result in a trophy in regular time. To them, a victory for Arsenal under those tactical conditions would have been a defeat for the very soul of the beautiful game.
But we really have to look at the other side of this coin. Because on the Our Gunners subreddit, The Arsenal fans were watching the exact same match and seeing an absolute defensive masterclass.
They were defending it fiercely.
Very fiercely. They were so proud of the resilience, they pointed out the ultimate defensive truth. PSG, this incredibly wealthy, state-backed, attacking juggernaut, could not score a single open play goal in 120 minutes.
Which is a staggering achievement when you really think about the sheer talent on the pitch.
It really is. Fans were praising Saliba and Gabriel as a brick wall that belongs in the history books. One fan accurately noted, the game could have gone on for another 2 hours and PSG still wouldn't have scored from open play.
They have a point.
They do. Their argument was rooted in stark realism, going toe-to-toe with PSG's blistering pace, trying to play expansive possession football, would have been tactical suicide.
Right.
They believed Arteta did the only logical thing required to neutralize the threat and give his team a chance to win.
It's the eternal footballing debate, isn't it? Is it better to lose beautifully while staying true to your ideals, or to attempt to win ugly?
Exactly.
But the cruel irony of this final is that Arsenal attempted to win ugly, entirely abandoned their attacking philosophy, and still ended up in a 1-1 deadlock.
Which logically shifts our focus to the ultimate unforgiving tiebreaker.
The inevitable penalty shootout. This is the moment where all the tactical low blocks, all the possession data, and all the coaching manuals just vanish into thin air and pure, raw human psychology takes over.
And the context here is vital. This was only the 12th European Cup or Champions League final in history to ever go to penalties.
Only the 12th. Wow.
Yeah. But what ratcheted the tension up to an agonizing level is that neither Arsenal nor PSG had ever experienced a Champions League final shootout before.
Completely uncharted territory.
For every single player standing in that center circle.
Which brings us to the moment that completely ignited the internet and ultimately doomed Arsenal. Let's dissect Enrique Eze's penalty miss.
Yeah, let's look at that.
Because this wasn't just a missed kick. Watching it, it felt like a psychological collapse on live television. Eze steps up for a crucial penalty, and instead of just confidently picking a spot and striking the ball, he attempts this incredibly slow, nonchalant stutter-step run-up.
It was painful to watch.
He's practically creeping towards the ball, tiptoeing, trying to wait out the PSG goalkeeper, Matvei Safonov.
We need to analyze the biomechanics and the specific psychology of the stutter-step penalty here.
Yeah, please do. Why do they do it?
The entire premise of this technique is deception. The taker is trying to make the goalkeeper twitch, to commit their body weight to one side a fraction of a second early.
Okay.
The moment the keeper drops their shoulder, the taker simply rolls the ball into the opposite corner. It requires immense calm, perfect timing, and complete control over your fine motor skills.
But fans on Reddit pointed out a completely hilarious and cruel irony about this specific moment. Because Safonov wasn't playing 4D psychological chess.
No, he wasn't.
He wasn't deeply analyzing Eze's hip movements. According to the fans, Safonov just had, and I'm quoting this directly because it's brilliant, molasses reflexes.
It was incredible to watch. He just stood there. He stood like an absolute statue rooted to the goal line.
And because Safonov didn't dive, because he didn't give Eze the visual cue he was desperately waiting for, Eze's entire mechanical plan short-circuited.
He panicked at the last microsecond.
All his forward momentum was gone from the stuttering, and he ended up awkwardly flubbing a weak shot that missed entirely. Fans were joking online that Safonov didn't even have to make a save. They claimed Safonov's aura deflected the ball.
Safonov's aura. That's so good.
I have to jump in here and rant for a second, because watching this, I am screaming at the television. Why do players insist on interpretive ballet dances in a Champions League final?
It's a fair question.
Think about what your body has just been through. You have been sprinting, defending, and suffering for 120 minutes. Your legs are filled with lactic acid. Your heart rate is probably sitting at 170 beats per minute.
The fatigue is immense.
And the noise in the Puskás Aréna is deafening. Why on earth would you rely on delicate, fine motor skills in that environment? You look at a player like Harry Kane or Alan Shearer back in the day, they pick a spot, they put their laces through the ball, and they smash it into the net with violent conviction.
Yeah, just blast it.
Why roll the dice on a cute stutter step when the stakes are literally historic?
It's a brilliant question, and it really speaks to a flaw in modern penalty training.
How so?
While players practice these deceptive Panenka-style or stutter step run-ups on perfectly manicured training pitches in empty stadiums on a Tuesday afternoon.
Right, no pressure.
Exactly. And in that low-pressure environment, they look brilliant. They work. But when you apply the suffocating pressure of a global final, the brain-body connection phrase, the fine motor skills abandon you.
It's a huge gamble.
It's an incredibly high-risk, high-reward strategy. And when it fails, as fans pointed out regarding Eze, who actually tried a similar gimmick in the Community Shield previously and had it backfire, it looks incredibly foolish and arrogant.
But the nightmare wasn't over for Arsenal. Eze's miss was bad. But the final fatal blow came down to Gabriel.
The center back.
The man who had just played an absolutely flawless 120 minutes of heroic backs-to-the-wall defense. He steps up to take the crucial fifth penalty. And unbelievably, he also attempts a variation of a stutter step, and he completely misses.
Just brutal.
The Reddit threads were melting down.
Yeah.
Arsenal fans were absolutely baffled, demanding to know, why on earth is the center back taking the fifth penalty?
It breaks every conventional rule of penalty shootout hierarchy.
Right.
Traditionally, the fifth penalty is reserved for your most ice-cold, reliable, technically gifted finisher. It is the highest pressure kick of the sequence.
So why Gabriel?
Arsenal fans were tearing their hair out wondering exactly that. Why didn't someone like Saliba or Jurrien Timber or even one of the remaining attackers take the responsibility? To send a physically exhausted center back up to perform a delicate stutter step in the defining moment of his career, it is a managerial and on-pitch failure of leadership.
And the tragedy of this shootout is magnified tenfold when you look at David Raya, the Arsenal goalkeeper.
Oh, absolutely.
Because Raya actually did his job. He made a phenomenal save during the shootout. He gave his team the advantage. But he was completely betrayed by two awful, off-target, unforced errors from his own teammates. It's brutal.
It is the cruelest possible way to lose a football match. To defend with absolute perfection from open play for 2 hours against the best attack in Europe, to have your goalkeeper make a crucial save in the shootout, and to still walk away empty-handed because your players tried to get cute from the penalty spot.
It's devastating.
It is a psychological wound that will take a very long time to heal.
Which perfectly sets up our exploration of the emotional fallout. Because reading through the fan reactions in the hours after the match, you get a front-row seat to the Arsenal fan psyche.
It was a very complicated place to be.
It was this incredible, messy collision of intense pride and agonizing historical heartbreak. Let's talk about how they processed it compared to their overall successful Premier League campaign.
Well, the historical weight is the anchor around their necks. As we discussed earlier, 226 games in this competition now without a trophy, and the internet, as always, was completely ruthless.
Oh, what's that?
Within seconds of the final whistle, rival supporters flooded every forum, every social media platform, chanting the classic taunt, "Champions of Europe, you'll never sing that."
Ouch.
They were reveling in the continuation of Arsenal's European curse.
But digging into the R Gunners subreddit, the duality of the fanbase's emotion was fascinating. Yes, the heartbreak was profound. Losing on penalties always feels like a robbery.
It always does.
But the Arsenal fans, fiercely, almost militantly, defended their team and the broader context of their season. You have to remember the emotional high they were coming off of. They just won the Premier League.
Right. Their domestic campaign was a massive success.
The comments were flooded with people holding up the stat, 0 losses in the competition.
Yeah.
They were eagerly pointing out that mathematically, Arsenal didn't actually lose a single match in regulation or extra time during this entire Champions League campaign.
That is a vital coping mechanism, but it's also factually true.
Yeah, it is.
There was a prevailing defiant sentiment among the core fan base of, do not let rival rage baiters on Twitter ruin what has been a genuinely incredible season. They acknowledged that they took the most expensive, dangerous team in Europe to the absolute physical limit and only blinked in a shootout.
It's an emotional state that I can only compare to waking up from a terrifying nightmare, bathed in sweat, only to look around and realize you're sleeping in a luxury suite at a 5-star hotel.
That's a really evocative way to put it.
Right. Yes, tonight is pure agony. The nightmare of Isai's stutter step is going to play on a loop in their heads. But tomorrow they still get to wake up, put on their kits, and attend a massive open-top bus parade through the streets of London to celebrate a Premier League trophy. The sky isn't actually falling.
The domestic triumph undeniably cushioned the European blow. However, that didn't mean the fans were blindly loyal or ignorant of the team's glaring flaws on the night.
No, they had plenty of critiques.
While they fiercely defended the backline, there was significant pointed frustration directed at the offensive execution.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
This is where the tactical term horseshoe of sadness started popping up all over the forums. I love this phrase. Explain the spatial geometry of the horseshoe of sadness.
It perfectly encapsulates the frustration of watching a possession team fail to penetrate.
Okay, walk us through it.
When Arsenal did occasionally get the ball, instead of driving vertically toward the goal, they would pass it out to the left wing. The winger, seeing PSG's defense set, would pass it back to the defensive midfielder.
Okay, passes.
Exactly. The midfielder passes it to the right wing. The right winger passes it back. It creates a literal U-shape or horseshoe of passing around the perimeter of the opponent's box that looks like possession on a stat sheet, but yields absolutely zero threat.
It's sad because it's sterile.
Very sterile.
And the fans were furious about the lack of counterattacking bite. They noted that when they finally got the ball back deep in their own half, the attackers looked terrified to actually hold on to it and transition up the field.
They did look hesitant.
They specifically lamented that substitutes who were brought on for their pace, guys like Gabriel Martinelli, Victor Gyökeres, and Noni Madueke, completely squandered genuine fast break opportunities in extra time because of poor decision-making or heavy touches.
There was a very strong consensus building in those post-match threads that while the defense is championship caliber, the attacking core requires a serious, ruthless upgrade if they are ever going to win a match of this magnitude.
You cannot rely on a 0-0 draw to win the Champions League.
You really can't.
And to fully understand the gravity of this final, we have to pivot our focus from the losers to the winners. Let's talk about Paris Saint-Germain, their celebration, and what this victory represents to the broader landscape of modern football.
For PSG, this victory is the ultimate vindication of a massive organizational pivot.
How so?
For years, they were criticized as a plastic club that just bought famous individuals who didn't play defense. But manager Luis Enrique has achieved something historically remarkable here.
What did he do?
By winning this title, he became the first Spanish coach to win back-to-back Champions League titles since Jose Villalonga did it with Real Madrid way back in the 1950s.
That is an insane echelon of footballing history to step into.
Truly. And the way they run it validates his philosophy. Vitinha, a central midfielder, was named player of the match. He didn't score, but he dictated the entire tempo, controlling the midfield with brilliant passing and positional awareness.
He was everywhere.
He was. And the PSG fans were celebrating wildly online. They were particularly vocal and deeply petty, I might add, about the Kylian Mbappe factor.
Oh, the schadenfreude was off the charts.
They were pointing out that they have now won 2 consecutive Champions Leagues immediately after their biggest, most demanding star left for Real Madrid.
That's hilarious.
Fans were joking that Mbappe must be foaming at the mouth watching his former team achieve the ultimate European dominance without having to cater to his tactical whims.
It proved to the fan base that Luis Enrique's vision of a collective, hard-working, cohesive unit is fundamentally superior to a team built around isolated superstars.
It really solidified that belief for them.
But this is where the conversation among neutral fans gets incredibly philosophical and honestly a bit bleak.
Yeah, it got dark in the neutral threads.
Because many commenters on the Champions League threads looked at this match, looked at the two teams involved, and declared it the pick your poison final.
Yeah, your poison.
They felt this single 120-minute match perfectly encapsulated everything wrong with the business, structure, and spirit of modern football. Explain why supporters feel this match represents modern football at its worst.
Well, it was a very prominent, very cynical theme. You had 2 highly polarizing philosophies colliding, and neutrals hated both of them. Let's break down the 2 viewpoints. On one side, you have Arsenal. To the neutrals, Arsenal represented the death of entertainment. Here is a massively wealthy Premier League club possessing some of the most expensive attacking talent in the world, actively choosing to play 120 minutes of entirely negative, joyless, defensive football.
They were viewed as cowards, refusing to entertain the paying public.
Exactly.
Right, the team that completed under 200 passes in a European final. It's hard to romanticize that.
It's impossible to romanticize. But on the other side of the coin, you have PSG. And to the purists, PSG represents a completely different kind of footballing rot.
The financial side.
Right. They are a club backed by the immense, practically limitless sovereign wealth of a nation-state. Fans pointed out the deep, insurmountable structural inequalities at play.
Explain the structural advantage part, because the complaints about the French domestic league were a huge talking point online. Just impartially, what were the fans arguing?
Right, so fans were arguing that Ligue 1, the French domestic league, practically acts as PSG's personal assistant.
Personal assistant, wow.
There were bitter complaints that the French governing body will actively postpone PSG's domestic league matches to give them stress-free, extended rest windows before big Champions League knockout ties.
Wait, they alter the calendar to help PSG win in Europe.
That's the argument, yeah. Meanwhile, English teams like Arsenal are grinding through a brutal, heavily congested, physically punishing winter schedule just to fight for top 4 placement in their domestic league.
It's a massive difference in physical toll.
Exactly. Neutrals argued that this systemic, state-supported advantage allows PSG to keep their squad artificially fresh, making the European competition inherently unfair.
So if you are a neutral fan looking at the landscape of the sport, I have to ask you, does this final prove that to reach the absolute pinnacle of modern football, a team only has 2 options?
What's the binary?
You either need the unfathomable financial backing and structural league advantages of a nation-state, or you need the willingness to entirely abandon the beautiful, flowing, attacking part of the beautiful game just to survive against them.
Yeah.
Is that the binary choice now?
It is a deeply cynical view of the sport, but it is hard to argue that this final didn't provide massive ammunition for that exact argument.
It really did.
It highlighted that at the highest level of this sport, the margins between winning and losing are so microscopic that teams are forced to exploit any advantage they can find. Whether that's leveraging immense financial power, manipulating domestic scheduling, or deploying extreme, joyless tactical negativity on the pitch.
It leaves a lot of football purists feeling entirely alienated from the sport they grew up loving.
It definitely alienates them.
It makes you question what we are actually tuning in to watch, which logically brings us to the future. With the 2025-2026 season officially concluded and the confetti swept up in Budapest, what does this specific match dictate for the trajectory of both of these heavyweights going into next year? What are Arsenal's future Champions League ambitions?
For Arsenal, the focus immediately, almost desperately, shifts to the summer transfer window.
They need players.
They do. The fans, while proud of the domestic title, are universally demanding upgrades to their attacking core. They realize that to take that final elusive step in Europe, they need forwards who can relieve pressure.
They need a different profile of attacker.
Exactly. They need a striker who can hold up the ball against physical center backs and wingers who can ruthlessly punish teams on the counterattack. They are exhausted by the horseshoe of sadness.
They never want to see their team forced to defend in a low block for 114 minutes again.
Never again.
But the underlying mood among the Arsenal faithful is still undeniably optimistic, right? They aren't tearing the project down. They still have hope for next year's competition.
Very much so. Arteta has built a formidable, structurally sound foundation. The fans take a lot of comfort in recent footballing history.
What history?
Well, they point out that giants like Manchester City, Chelsea, and indeed PSG themselves all suffered incredibly heartbreaking, high-profile failures in their early Champions League finals before eventually breaking through and lifting the trophy.
So failure as a stepping stone.
Right. Arsenal fans view this agonizing penalty loss not as a dead end, but as a painful, necessary psychological step in their evolution as a club.
And as for the champions, PSG.
For PSG, there is a genuine, creeping fear among rival fans across Europe that Luis Enrique has found a new blueprint to monopolize the Champions League.
Monopolize it.
Yeah. When you combine their incredible squad depth, their cohesive tactical setup that relies on relentless collective pressure rather than individual whims, and those undeniable domestic scheduling advantages, some fans worry PSG might just lock down a spot in the final every single year.
That's a scary thought for the rest of Europe.
They seem to have cracked the code of European football in the post-Mbappe era.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, though, specifically regarding Arsenal. It's the massive psychological hurdle they now face going into August.
The expectations.
Yes. Think about it.
Yeah.
For the last few years, their entire emotional identity, the entire narrative of the club, has been tied up in finally winning the Premier League.
Mm-hmm.
They were the hungry challengers.
And they achieved it.
Well, they just did it. They won the league. But now they transition from a team that is thrilled to finally conquer their domestic rivals to a team carrying the heavy, unforgiving international expectation of European glory.
The pressure shifts.
Next season, Winning a Premier League title might not be enough to satisfy the hunger of a fan base that just tasted a European final. They are officially on the clock in the Champions League.
That is the ultimate burden of becoming a true elite club. The goalposts constantly shift. You are never allowed to just be satisfied.
You always need more.
Arteta has successfully built a team capable of surviving the absolute best attack in Europe for 120 minutes. But next year, survival isn't the goal. Next year, he has to prove he can actually beat them.
And that perfectly wraps up our deep dive for today. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of what was undeniably a tactically bizarre, emotionally draining, and historically significant Champions League final.
It was definitely all of those things.
We've looked at the mechanics of the bank vault defense, the mind-boggling statistical anomalies, the fragile biomechanics of penalty shootout psychology, and the bitter existential debates over the very soul of modern football.
As we close out, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Go ahead.
We have spent decades romanticizing the beautiful game. We praise the flowing passing networks, the ideals of total football, the spontaneous attacking flair.
The joy of it.
Right. But as the financial stakes get higher, as the margins for error get thinner, and as the tactical data becomes more absolute, we have to ask ourselves a difficult question.
With that?
Is the future of elite football destined to be less about who can play the most beautiful game and more about who is most willing to suffer?
Wow. It's a brilliant question to end on. Because when you look back at that upside-down tactical blueprint of this final, it might not make a lick of sense to the purists, and it might have ended in heartbreak, but it almost built Arsenal a monument. Keep questioning the narratives of the sports you love, keep digging into the mechanics behind the data, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.